Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Dave Garland with us, and Dave is in the venture world supporting commercial real estate. So Dave, it's great to have you. I'd just like to go through a little history of who you are and how you got to the venture capital world in commercial real estate.
I appreciate being here, Bruce. Thank you very much for the time. I'm Dave Garland. I'm a managing partner at Second Century Ventures and NAR Reach, originally set up as the venture capital arm of the largest trade association in the world, the National Association of Realtors. My background is in the real estate ecosystem. I'm a practitioner, have been a practitioner both on the residential side and the commercial side of the space, as well as a founder on the technology side. Real estate's really my passion to really continue to help the industry that I love and my friends that work in this trade, both domestically and globally. And I tend to focus on solving big problems in the biggest asset class in the world.
So you started out as a venture capital, as a person that put together businesses, and then you went into the venture world from there.
Actually, I got started in commercial real estate over 20 years ago, working in the buy-sell side for multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks, et cetera. Then quickly transitioned over into land developments and worked on developing various asset classes up and down the coast of California and as far east as Colorado. And that was before that Great Recession in 2007 and 2008, and then transitioned over into private equity and ownership of large portfolios of SFR, as well as notes secured by commercial real estate assets. And along that time, found a number of challenges specifically associated with the data and the provisioning of data within the CRE space, as well as in the resi space, and built a number of technology companies that help to solve those problems. Of course, that's really what you do in the Silicon Valley, and those companies had decent exits in the tech space and began foraging into a number of other investments into technology that served the real estate ecosystem alongside my day-to-day practice on the land development side, the entitlement side, and commercial ownership and operation side. Currently, I still have assets in 43 states.
So you've seen it all, basically, it sounds like, except you said you didn't get into the industrial side of the equation.
Not really until recently. Involved in a couple data center projects at the moment, but on the development side, hadn't really gotten into the development or provisioning of development into the industrial space. But now I'm starting to look at that on the side. But my day-to-day focus is on finding the best technologies in the world, investing in those from a venture standpoint, and bringing them into the real estate ecosystem.
So tell us a little bit about how you're finding those companies that are starting to come out of the weeds here.
Yeah, great question. So a little bit more about Second Century Ventures. Second Century Ventures was originally founded by the National Association of Realtors, and the original intent was to drive innovation and to empower entrepreneurs to help to revolutionize an industry that's often resistant to change. So its original mission at Second Century Ventures was to define and to deliver the future of the world's largest asset class by serving as a catalyst to emerging technologies, new opportunities, and really new talent. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. There's really no industry that's not touched by the real estate ecosystem. And really, the thesis has continued along the way for the last 10 years since I've been there with my two partners overseeing Second Century Ventures and the REACH program. And essentially what we're doing is building community, building the biggest community of practitioners in the world. And by practitioner, it's a big umbrella term. What I mean by that is owners, operators, brokers, agents, teams, title, curative services, financial services, et cetera, anybody who owns, operates, or transacts or is involved in the ownership, operational, or transaction of real estate. Building that community is really important domestically and globally, because when you have a massive community of these practitioners that also includes government officials, what you have is a set group of individuals that have problems. And really what we're looking for is common problems and the biggest problems that these practitioners have writ large. And if we can understand those problems, then what we can do is go out to the innovation community, the entrepreneurs of the world, and say, okay, how do we solve these problems at scale? The bigger the problem, the better. The more communal that problem, the better. And if we can go out and solve those problems and bring technology to that community, then we have something that most venture capital organizations don't have, and that's a distribution network. And the distribution network becomes incredibly important, especially in a world where it's much easier to develop software and services than ever before. So the differentiator is distribution. So we have a rabid community that's hungry for elements that can help solve problems, and these problems tend to define themselves or categorize themselves into friction points or points where it becomes easier for a consumer or for an owner operator to buy, sell, trade, or transform an asset. So we look for those nuances both domestically and globally. And once we have those, then we can go out and look across a number of industries, whether those industries are in the insurance space, the mortgage space, the age ecosystem or prop tech ecosystem, et cetera. We can look into those ecosystems and try to find those best technologies that have started to prove a bit product market fit. We'll make investments and then bring those organizations into our community. And if we do that right and consistently, then we'll find that many of these companies can scale across geography. And if they can scale across geography, then it increases the addressable market that they're able to serve, which solves problems for our community, solves our problem in terms of making sure that we get a return on our money from an investment standpoint, and it solves the entrepreneurial problem. So if we can create this virtuous circle of opportunity, then essentially we do good for the real estate ecosystem writ large. And we've been highly successful at that since 2007 when the fund was originally founded. And we typically find our best deals through our accelerator program, which is called the REACH program. And we have the REACH program that's operational in 8 different geographic regions around the globe. And essentially what each of these organizations does is it acts as a mechanism to source incredible emerging entrepreneurs that are starting to prove product market fit and introduce them into our respective communities and our regions. And we look for the best of the best, take them through our program, and the best of those will tend to get follow-on checks from our venture fund, and we'll continue to follow many of those operations all the way through to exits, and hopefully they're successful exits. And it's been a recipe that has been a very strong recipe in terms of not only financial returns for the organization, but returns to the community. And the returns to the community are really, what keep us growing. And to date, we have over 400 investments globally. And with the general idea being the best technologies don't ever care about borders. They care about problems that are solved. And, we're looking for universal problems that everybody has to be able to be solved. I know it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but hopefully that does it some justice.
No, I'm very fascinated by the fact that you define the problem and then go look for the solution. So, and then sometimes the solution comes back to you as a solution for a problem. So it sounds like it's a full ecosystem of kind of moving back and forth between the problem and the solution and who's going to do it and how it's all going to go together. So I am curious. You said you're in 8 different geographic locations. Can you tell us a little bit more about where that is?
Sure. So those represent each of our REACH regions, and we have 2 that are specific in the US, one that tends to focus on the residential space because it's such a huge space, and that's deploying technology to solve problems for residential practitioners. I mean, home ownership is really, one of the key catalysts to the US economy today. And when you talk about problems or challenges, the big challenge in that respective space is affordability. And that's been the problem for the last couple of years in the resi market. In the commercial market, we also have a sister program in the commercial space, and that's focus. I think over the last couple of years, it's focused on helping to reduce some of the cost of ownership and the cost of transfer of CRE assets across various asset classes. Then we've got a couple of organizations that we've invested in that have worked on enhancing the value of the underlying asset itself. Whether it be taking advantage of empty space or new use cases, et cetera. But underpinning all of those within the U.S. market tends to be data and back end operational enhancements and efficiencies. We have a program in Canada. Tends to be focused on some of the financial services market. They're pretty well integrated financial services, and so we see some really interesting innovation there. We have an office in Latin America that's domiciled in Mexico City, and that tends to be a little bit more on the frontier side of innovation when it comes to the real estate ecosystem. And a lot of the technologies there do tend to focus on the commercial aspect. We're seeing some logistic technology that's pretty cool, some pricing technology, especially for contractors, developers, and builders. They're really on the cutting edge of certain things. Some of their cost of capital is much lower than what we would find in the US. So the innovation coming out of there tends to be a little bit newer and more avant-garde, but we really like that ecosystem. We have a program in Europe that's domiciled in London, and that program is quite interesting because you get more involved in government and GovTech or RegTech, as it's oftentimes referred to, because regulation has had such a profound impact on that real estate ecosystem. Give you sort of an example. They have sustainability initiatives that are lopped on to the transferability of assets. So the way to position it, simply is, if you're a multifamily owner and you want to transfer assets, let's say in the UK, you've got to meet certain thresholds in order to continue to be able to lease those assets to tenants. And if you don't fix up the property that's up to certain government standards, then you get fined. And pretty profound, and especially coming from like a U.S. based mindset, to see that over there and to see the regulation having such an impact on some of the innovation is pretty fascinating. So we're seeing green initiatives pushed over there much quicker and implemented much faster in terms of the how that impacts the plant and operations of commercial assets, much more so than we do here in the U.S. So ESG is still very, very strong and well and alive over in the European markets, traditionally because it's banked into many of these government initiatives. We have offices in the Middle East, one in Tel Aviv and one in Dubai in the UAE. In the Israeli market, you have a lot of organizations that tend to focus on data and security. That's and that level of governance has certain impact with regard to transferability of property. And then in the UAE, they're doing incredible things with construction technology, and the amount of construction over there is pretty profound, and they're on the cutting edge of everything. Everything regarding skyscrapers to enhancements with retail establishments, et cetera, and transportation, et cetera. Then we have an office in Southeast Asia. We're finding a lot of activity in the tenant side of the ecosystem there, and tenant management and tenant operations. They're quite strong with a lot of that technology. And what's fascinating about all this is that every real estate geography or region around the world tends to have the same type of cycles. They're just at different parts of the cycle than, let's say, we are here in the US. So being able to invest in companies abroad, you're able to see around corners and get a sense of what may be happening in a market much faster than the U.S. Oftentimes in the U.S. we operate with a lot of blinders on, so we really like to see this technology that is being integrated and implemented in various regions, and ask the question, okay, can we bring this to the U.S. or can we bring certain technologies to some of these other markets? And by doing that, we enhance the addressable market for some of these entrepreneurs. We're able to sometimes get them into less competitive markets, or markets where they can have a competitive advantage, or work with some certain government entities in order to provide that competitive moat for them in the future, in order to enhance the company's revenue and to do good in those various regions.
That's fantastic. So I'm curious if you've gotten into the affordable housing market in any technology way.
The affordable housing market tends to fall into the category of fintech. That tends to be how that's addressed. I know on the reg tech side in the U.S., there's a number of various initiatives that are trying to work with various jurisdictions in order to either lower the cost of housing, lower the barrier to entry for first-time home buyers, which tends to be a pretty big issue, or if you're a tenant, provide opportunities for that tenant to either better qualify for livability and or be more of a tenant that's able to be resilient in sometimes their time of need. Whether that be tenant payments over a period of time, spaced over a period of time, versus paying at the beginning of the month, for instance. So you have a lot of credit type of applications and financial applications that are being deployed in order to address the affordability issue. Sometimes the big challenges or the big solutions come top down from the government, and that's one of the benefits of having a big partner like the National Association of Realtors, the big lobbying group in DC. We're able to lean on them and work with them on various initiatives across the aisle to enhance affordability and to enhance home ownership, which tends to still be one of the key marquee goals of most U.S. citizens.
So obviously there's a bunch of property management software groups out there. Have you gotten into that area at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's so much in terms of back-end management that has been around for a number of years, and I think a lot of these organizations are going after some of the big incumbents, which is great. Some of them are data-based organizations. Others are more traditional, sort of cheaper CRMs or better CRMs or AI-centric CRMs that they're working with in order to solve larger problems. And it depends on for who. Like, if I'm an investor, do I have operators in AI data-driven management platforms or that allow me access to enhance the performance of my assets? There's organizations like that, organizations that help you to acquire assets or locate assets. Then there's organizations that empower small businesses to become property owners so that they can obtain, like the control and the wealth and the performance afforded through ownership versus just general tenancy. So it really kind of depends on what angle that you're looking at. But yeah, we've invested in all sorts of organizations in the commercial side that help to solve some of those problems. Again, from the top down standpoint, what is the key problem? What's the respective solution, et cetera? And when you look to back office management, most of the problems are associated with, okay, how's my asset manager or property manager managing the property? What's the cost associated with that? What's the time that's being spent on managing tenants? What's the time being spent on managing vendors, et cetera? Or, very, very on a basic level, what's going on from an accounting standpoint. So it really kind of depends on the vantage point, number one, and then number two, like what's the specific problem being solved, and is there that much of a cost saving mechanism there in order to either deploy this type of technology, or is it something that's more of a nice to have as opposed to a yes, we absolutely need it? So what we're doing is we're out there looking for those companies where it's much more than a nice to have, but it's actually solving a very real problem, and that we can see it solve the problem, downstream, where it may not just be solving a problem for the commercial real estate ecosystem, but it may solve the problem for the resi market. It may solve the problem for multiple markets, even outside of real estate, because this market has a lot of low barriers to entry. And so, the bigger the market and the more sex appeal of the product or service, the bigger the opportunity from a venture standpoint. And that's becoming more and more difficult with AI, where you can build these technologies much better, quicker, faster than you have ever been able to build them before, and much more tailored to a specific solution. So, to the extent that you have something with good sex appeal that is solving a real problem, the differentiator is going to be distribution. And that's where we look to our community of, voracious operators and owners, where they're like, help solve this damn problem for me. And, to the extent we're able to step in and provide this solution, and that solution gets adopted and picked up and appreciated by these practitioners, then that's when you have a winner.
Well, I'm curious, most venture capital groups don't necessarily have that kind of audience, so to speak, to ask about their problems. So this is a fascinating genre that you're in. So I'm curious, are you going after the JLLs or the CBREs, or who's in that ecosystem on the other side, the big guys or anybody and everybody?
Yeah, so the answer is yes. I mean, we love partnering with organizations like JLL. We partner with JLL as an entity, as well as JLL Spark. When we talk to all the venture folks that are in the commercial space, and work with them and play nicely in the sandbox. I think the difference is that historically, we don't have any types of restrictions, or we don't have a bent toward looking for a solution for one particular player. Let's say, we don't have an office bent on how we're trying to solve. We're more big picture, like what are the problems across segments. And if those problems at a later point in time create a company that CBRE wants to purchase, great. We love that. We love it when partners in our ecosystem decide that we love one of these companies and we would like to acquire them. And those acquisitions mean, really nice, oftentimes nice exits for the founders, nice exits for us, but more importantly, benefit to the community. But we look at our community in a couple different ways. We have our corporate partners, we have our association partners. Our corporate partners would be like the JLLs, the CBREs of the world, the plug and plays of the world. The association partners are more, like the real estate associations or training bodies. So look at like SIOR, for instance, or CCIM. Or these big associations that are helping many of the practitioners become more efficient within their actual practice of owning, operating, transferring assets. And then we have government and non-government partners, and these are the equivalent of like the NARs of the world. So we have the NAR equivalent in the United Kingdom with NAEA Property Mark, the TDS, which essentially handles all the tenant deposits for multifamily over in the UK. We have partnerships that we just inked in Latin America with AMPI, which is the NAR equivalent in Mexico, and SILA, which is a very large organization that controls most of the operational practitioners throughout Latin America, that helps them, get educated on transferring assets. So those types of enterprises have access to literally hundreds of thousands of practitioners that all have certain demands, and those help to impact, how real estate is conveyed, transferred, and owned in those respective geographies. So that's how we would classify our respective partners. And again, with each of those partners, our job is to survey those partners for their respective needs and their challenges, and work with them to understand like what is going to be your problem, not only now but 5 years from now, so that we can go out and find the technologies that'll solve those problems. So that's relatively straightforward on paper vision, easy to say, a little bit more harder to integrate and implement. But again, that is our differentiator, are these partnerships. And that's necessary because when you think about real estate as a community, it's oftentimes local, but it's very community centric. And that's why we get back to, well, what does our community want? What does our community need? And because there's literally thousands and thousands of products out there. I mean, I review at least 2,000 business plans every single year from startups. And that's even in the filter of companies that are already going concerns, they've already got some revenue in. I mean, we tend not to invest in any company that's pre-revenue. They have to have a little bit of product market fit, because we can't really bring them into our community unless they are a proven enterprise. Otherwise, the community will devour them. They'll eat them up, and you've got to have products that that are vetted. So our responsibility is to vet some of these products, because our community trusts us to be bringing products to market that make sense for them, that are vetted, that have venture type appeal, and that can stand the test of growth and scale. And that's part of our job as well, is to help these companies grow and scale. And we do that vis-a-vis our symbiotic relationship with our community.
So I'm curious whether you've delved into the CoStar, LoopNet, Kresge world at all in terms of real estate data itself.
Oh yeah. We've got a lot of in the past. Yes, I mean we learned a number of different ways. We were an early investor in Accelerant many years ago, before they went under, and that was a lot of learnings from there. But along that side, there's a number of different data companies and AI companies that are working on components that are going to be necessary either for modeling native language models off of, or just providing better comps for the ecosystem. And that's important for a number of different reasons. I mean, we are also, again, partners with NAR, and NAR has a pretty impressive commercial real estate database. Oftentimes, most commercial practitioners don't even know about it, but their members, as realtors, they don't even know they have access to this thing called RPR, Realtors Property Resource, and it is a phenomenal resource for commercial data and information because it aggregates all of the MLS information across the country, puts it in one spot. So oftentimes the comps there, if I'm looking for commercial properties myself, that'll be the starting place for me, to get a better sense of how various asset classes are doing in a respective community. It's a phenomenal free resource if you're a realtor. So I mean, that's a small commercial for them, but that's impressive. And oftentimes many of our companies will work to try to partner to get to be part of that RPR ecosystem. So we're pretty excited about that respective relationship and the growth of their database.
No, that's very intriguing because I've never even heard of it. Of course, I spend very little time on that side of the equation. So it's interesting to hear that. So I'm going to go start looking for it. It sounds like they need to do a little marketing to get out to the commercial world.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's a resi product and a commercial product, but it's one of those things where, because they give it away to realtor members for free, the presumption is most realtors have access to it, and it's and there's a lot of realtors that use it predominantly for the resi side, but on the commercial side, it's pretty spectacular information.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go start looking for that. Well, I've got probably 1,000 other questions, but I think we need to reconvene in 3 to 6 months and see where we're going from here. But where can people get a hold of you, Dave?
Yeah. Feel free to email me here on, I think my email's right by my name here, or find me on LinkedIn. Happy to chat with you on LinkedIn if you want to reach out to me there.
That's fantastic. Well, I look forward to talking to you again in the very near future.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.